Usually when people are anxious, they start breathing shallow, right? And what they should be doing is, at first, right, is to breathe in the diaphragm to where it's pushing the belly down, pushing the guts down. Deep breath into the nose, out to the mouth. For some reason, this just works much better than just nose breathing for this function, right? So deep breath in, push the diaphragm down, out to the nose. And just attention to the breath when someone's anxious is very, very useful. Because when people are anxious, they're running around in their mind in a circle like a dog chasing its tail. And it creates this kind of vicious spiral. And sometimes people spiral into, actual panic attacks. And so you don't want that. Nobody wants that. And so you got to put your attention elsewhere besides the mind. So one of the first places to put it would be, like I said, on the breath. And then relax your body, right? You relax your body. It's actually very quick. And then once your body's fully relaxed, relax it some more. And then once you've relaxed it some more, relax it again. You can't be too relaxed for this. And this is why in Zen, they pay so much attention to stacking your spine up properly. So, because otherwise you'll fall like this, you can't breathe, or you'll start, moving around because you're so relaxed. So you gotta stack your spine up. It's different for everybody. It just takes some practice. But while you're sitting, you want to do that, and then you can feel the weight of your body just like pressing down into gravity. And while you're sitting, you just feel kind of your spine just like a big wooden dowel, let's say, going straight into the seat, and it's holding you up, even though your spine's not straight and certainly not overextended like this. It's just in its natural position, which takes practice to get used to, right? And the Zen guys, they'll spend years working on this, but you don't need to, because you're not in a lotus position. And then later you'll learn how to breathe from the soles of your feet, right? Which is a way of speaking, but you literally can move the energies down to the soles of your feet and back up to the crown of your head. Ooh. And so one way to gauge how relaxed you are is how loose are your lips. And some pranayama people, they tell you to go ahead and use your lips that way and put a little backwards pressure, what in medicine we call a positive pressure, back onto the lungs. But you don't need all the anatomy, just to know that sometimes if you put a little resistance to the breath, it helps the alveoli open up a little bit more, increases oxygen exchange, and does something probably to your CO2 receptors, right? So use that too. Some more things about anxiety. Anxiety is contagious. If you're in a room with an anxious person, you can catch anxiety. If you're watching, also you got to be careful with your content. Even the content from the day before can spill over. So if you're watching content or consuming content that makes you anxious, just don't do that. And pay attention to how something makes you feel in real time, right? So what you're doing is, hey, you're watching a program. Maybe it's news, maybe it's something else. but you realize that, this doesn't feel good. There's no reason for you to feel bad at this particular time, right? Unless you're going to go do something about it. So I posted something earlier this morning. It was, the people who worry about the world are like people who cry into a river hoping that they're going to increase the water supply, So at any rate, okay, so pay attention to content. That's really important. And cultivate your content, to be to feel good for you. And what feels good to the body mind, unless something's wrong with your head, is stuff that's nourishing, stuff that's good, right? Because we're actually good people. We lose track of that because of all of the negativity all around us. But deep in our core, we're made of love, actually, ultimately. And so what happens then is the mind just gets in the way. So the first step would be to get back to the breath. What the Taoists would call return to the center. And so when you feel the anxiety building up, the first thing to do is return to the center. But then, of course, what will happen is the mind will start running around, right? And this is where you could just swap out your thoughts. If you're reading a book or listening to a book or watching a YouTube, you're not really thinking. You're letting somebody or something else think for you. And so I know this sounds crazy. Okay, have you noticed that? That basically,
yes,
instead of your,
yeah,
that's why you have to, well, it's not spoon feeding. That has a pejorative to it. Sometimes you're tired of your own thoughts because they're just going around in a circle, right? So you're exhausted from that because it's the same old stuff over and over, a little bit of variation. One day you're anxious about this, the next day someone's anxious about that, but it's the same thing. It's just going around and around in circles. So sometimes it's good for people. At some point, that none of this is either a prescription nor an absolute, right? But sometimes you could swap out your thoughts for the thoughts of someone else through an audiobook, or through reading a book, or through a good YouTube, or through later you can do it with birdsong, right? Or with ocean waves, but then you have to have a pretty quiet mind and a pretty sensitive mind. And that's the goal. That's what you're working for. Let's see, what else? Okay, so watch what you're consuming, because just like certain drugs can make you anxious, certain content can do the same thing. Use your breath, right, to return to the center. And breathe, there's 100 different ways to breathe, and you can learn about them. You can learn about them from Western breath people, or the masters are from India, right? The pranayama, and the Tibetans. So with breathing, I tend to go to the ancients, right? Because we haven't changed physiologically. And then you breathe, as far. Eventually you start with your diaphragm, and then you can go much deeper than that. And then if you do it for a while, what'll happen is there'll be nothing but the breath. Oh yeah, and something else you can do. This is very wild. I can't believe it's true, but it is true. They didn't teach you this in med school. But if you smile slightly while you're doing this, maybe not at first, you won't notice it because your mind is still too chaotic, right? But once your mind calms down, you can feel the effect of the smile on your whole physiology. So it's not just cause, it's also effect, like so many things in this universe. We look at them as cause or effect, when in fact they're both. But we just aren't paying close enough attention, right? Which brings me to the other thing about anxiety, is it's there as a signal, right? It's there for a good reason. Now, if you're anxious because there's snakes on the ground, that's a good reason to figure out a new solution to your situation, right? But if your mind is anxious, it's telling you something's wrong, right? you're afraid, and so to deal with the fear is the real way to deal with this, right? Is to deal with whatever the underlying fear is, and the common ones are, I'm gonna never get a girl. I'm always going to be broke. Nobody likes me. No one will ever like me. I won't get this job, or I won't get this promotion, or it just goes on and on and on and on forever and ever and ever and ever. And those things will never ever satiate or satisfy. It's like hunger. You can eat, to your full. You can eat to your bursting one day, but within a day or two, you're going to be hungry again, right? So you can't solve that problem at the level of the problem. So you have to go up another level. But let me see if there's anything more about anxiety right off the top of my head. I think it's there for a reason. It comes to help. It can be very, very painful, right? And it's suffering. And so you want to so again, it's like depression. The way you get out of depression and anxiety both is you grow to another level of understanding. You need more insight. And for insight, you need information, you need attention, and you need a certain amount of concentration, in the sense that, you can't learn anything, even about your own mind, unless you stop long enough to pay attention. And so paying attention to your breath usually helps with anxiety, but oftentimes, it's, especially in the beginning, it doesn't, because your mind keeps churning, right? So you can change the channel on your mind. You put in some other content, right? Or you can, get involved in a book, get involved in a movie, get involved in anything. But don't use video games, because those are addicting. I mean, I'm speaking now just to young men. Be careful with the video games, because those will substitute for life very easily. You've got drama, you've got adventure, you've got hot women, you've got, fights and peace and all kinds of friendships and all kinds, it's a substitute life. But, as there's no there in cyberspace, and people are going to learn this. Right now we're in the middle of this kind of like the wonderful rush of new discovery, right? It's like discovering the new world, America. It's like, oh, holy moly, think of all the potential we've got here, right? But the reality is that it's the new world is the same as the old world. Wherever you go, there you are, right? So we're going to bring the same anxieties, the same insecurities, the same, crapola into cyberspace as we have in the real world. And there is a real world, right? The way is you can hear it and you can see it, and it's not pixels, and it's not, it's, we imagine that the world is like a computer, the way in the last century everybody imagined everything was hydraulic, right? I mean, literally, Freud looked at the mind as a hydraulic, right? Because that's the discovery of the time, okay? It hadn't been discovered, actually rediscovered, like everything, pretty much. And so this is very natural, what's happening with cyberspace. It's like, oh, wow, we can get away from all our problems and create our new world. Well, it's our mind that creates the problems in the first place. All right, so relaxation, breathing, swap out the content, and examine what you've been doing, because usually you've got bad content either internally or externally interacting with each other. And then do something about it. Right, so in the case of the snakes on the floor, you get the hell out of there, or you get a shotgun and get rid of the snakes. I don't know, right? But in the case of your mind, a lot of times, although it's your mind that's creating the problem, it's your body that's magnifying it. Okay, and so going to the gym, working out, going for a run, all these things work, but they only work temporarily. Ultimately, you've got to get to the root solution, which is fear. And that's in your mind. And usually, in normal people, fear comes when there's something that needs to be done. Otherwise, it's just neurotic. It's like crying into a river so you can have more water supply. It's totally irrational. So then what needs to be done? And that's something we should talk about on an individual basis, right? And I want to do that. Let's talk about an actual action plan, right? So this is not a comprehensive overview, but it's a start. And so let's get to questions next.